Today we are going to be wire wrapping one of these really cute little egg-shaped crystals. So this is opalite here. It's about 3 centimeters tall and 2 centimeters wide. To start off with, we use our 20 gauge dead soft silver wire, and we're using 14 inches. And we're going to start by making our bail. So just leaving a little tail there at the end. We just start by wrapping that around our round nose pliers, leaving the little tail straight there. And we're going to wrap it around 2 times. So that gives us a nice strong bail. Just keep wrapping it around until you've gone around near the tail again. And then you can bring that tail around the other piece of wire. Make sure it's all crimped down nice and tight. That makes a nice secure bail. Then you can check your little loops that they're straight and together, nice and rounded. Now we need to make what look like the petals on the top of the egg design. We just start by measuring out 1.5 centimeter lengths. So just measuring the first 1.5 centimeter length there. And with my pliers, I've just grabbed it and then we just bend it right at the 1.5 mark. So then you can keep measuring 1.5 centimeters along and just doing the same thing back again. So heading down from the bail, we just need to make 6 of these. So they will be like the claw kind of part that's going to hold the top of the egg there. So just keep going along. If you can judge the distance okay on your own without measuring each one, that's okay, but they just need to be about the same length. So just keep going along until you've got 6 in the downward direction, going away from the bail. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just going to do one more there. So there's number 6. So we just need to make these little ends a little bit more rounded on this end here. So I just start by opening each one up and putting my round nose pliers in there. Then just bending it around the round nose pliers. See how that's just opened that one up a little bit? So I just do the same with all of them down that side. So this is the last one there, just bending that one around as well. So you should have something that looks a little bit like this, sort of like petals on a flower. Now we're just going to shape our wire there to sort of come around. So the 6th petal is going to sort of meet up with the first one. And you want the bail to be pointing upwards as well. So just slowly kind of working with your wires to work them into place. Slowly shaping them downwards as well, because they're going to go around the top of the egg. So once you've got that 6th petal sort of meeting up with the first one, you can just wrap this piece of wire around the bottom of the bail as well, and that's just going to start to secure that in place. So I just wrap it around once there and then keep it up out of the way. Now we need to grab a length of our 26 gauge wire. I use about 10 inches for this part. So just measure out those 10 inches there. And I just start by wrapping it around the bail there at the bottom. And then we're going to wrap each petal around as well, just to secure each petal onto the bail. I go down in between each petal just down and up, pulling it nice and tight, and then around the bail. And down the next petal and around the bail. And around the next petal and around the bail until you've got each petal secured onto the bail. And then I just go around the bail a couple of extra times just to make sure that they're all secured on there with wire. Then you can cut that wire off on your tails. Make sure it's crimped in nice and tight so there's no pieces sticking out. And then just grabbing your 20 gauge wire that you initially made the bail with. That should have a little tail up there. So just grabbing that and doing a couple of loops around that bail now to just cover that 26 gauge wire that you've secured all the other bits with. And of course cutting that tail and crimping it down nice and tight. So you should have something that looks a little bit like this, a bit like a flower. So now we need to start to bend these little petals just to shape them around the egg so they're not coming down straight. So I just grab something, I mean you could use a pen, or this is sort of a little bit rounded on the ends. I just grab my pliers and just gently bend each petal downwards. So you can see that those petals are now sort of pointed a bit more down, so they're going to shape around the egg nicely. Then you can just grab your egg and position it on there and see how it's fitting, and you can bend it accordingly. Just making sure your petals are all sort of sitting nicely and spaced out. Then we're going to move on to the weaving part. So I call this dragon skin weave. Looks a little bit like scales or skin on a reptile. So for this here, we use about 30 inches of the 26 gauge wire. So I take that little cage that we've started making off my crystal, and then I just start by securing this 26 gauge wire onto the base of one of the petals there. So I just start by wrapping around a couple of times and just making sure it's pulled nice and tight. And then snip that little tail off, making sure it's nice and tight. Alright, so just placing your crystal back inside, we're going to start with this weave. We're basically just going up into each petal now. And we're going up underneath. So poking it up underneath and pulling it out the front. In each loop, you're basically going up the right hand side and down the left. If you can make the wire work in that way, even if you just bend it around that way. So it's sort of up the right and down the left. So as it comes across, it's going to start to form a little loop there. So we just work our way across and over to the next loop as well. So up the right hand side and around and down. So just hanging onto your egg nice and tightly. So you want to be careful with this wire while you're threading it that you don't make any bends in it. Just work gently and slowly with it, so you're using it like thread, but you don't want it to have any bends in it. And just making sure that loop is sort of heading into the bottom of the petal there. And again, just up the right and coming back down the left and over itself. And just working around your egg now. So you're going to do all 6 petals. And just holding that wire wrap onto your egg nice and secure as well, so it stays in the center. So back to the first one, but we just keep going into that loop as well, same as all the others. Untwisting your wire. This wire can get very fragile if it gets bent, and if it gets bent in and out a couple of times it might just break, so you really want to avoid that. So now we've been around one layer of the design, so you've been into each petal. Now we're just going to do the next layer, and by doing that you're just going to thread the wire into each loop that you created on the last loop around, and then it's just the exact same design. So threading it under and up the right and going down the left, and you just keep going around now in that same fashion around the whole egg again, up the right and bringing it back towards your thumb there, and you just keep going around. So that's going to pull the little net downwards when you loop through it and pull it down again. The wire does sort of stay in place, so it's actually kind of cool, and so with each loop you'll start to see that your little netting that you're making is actually coming down on the egg a little bit further each layer that you do. And so you just keep working around the whole egg this way until you get to the bottom. So now you've made it down near the bottom. You can actually, some of the loops get quite small towards the bottom here as you've formed it around the base of your egg. So you can actually start to skip a loop here and there and just start to go like directly across the egg. You're wanting to make this netting come together just so there's no way that your crystal can escape. So you just want to keep going around and round into a couple of these little loops to make sure that there's no hole that's big enough for your crystal to get out. And once you've done that, you can have a look and just see how your design's going to look best when you finish the wrap. It sort of looks a little bit like a spider web or something like that, but you just want it to be all joined at the bottom. So when you've come down here, you're just going to want to poke your wire underneath. I'm just going to poke it underneath one of the other loops and then pull it nice and tight, and then just wrap it around again, just so it sort of looks like another loop in there, but you've got your wire wrapped around nice and tight. So you really just want to make sure that the wire is poked under and not going to be pointing into anyone. You can see that little tail there, so I'm just going to bend that around just gently and then poke it underneath. So you can take a little time to work with your wires now to get them more into an even place if they're not sitting how you want them. And then it should be pretty much finished.